Welcome to Mama Moves podcast, where we focus on identifying barriers, removing barriers, and breaking through so that we can be who God has created and formed us to be, do what God has called us to do, and go where God has planned for us to go. I am your host, LaQuisha Williams. Let's get moving in our minds so we can move in our bodies.
The Lord always seems to bring me back to identity. He has his way of just like putting the mirror down and focusing on something else, but picking it back up at the right time and putting it right in front of me. At those times where he's putting the mirror down, I feel like he is teaching me some things. He's molding me, he's shaping me, he's fine tuning me, he's fashioning me. And then he'll pick up the mirror again and tell me to look at me. Before, it used to be really hard to look at myself, so much so that I couldn't even see a lot of things. And in those times where I come to those places where the Lord is revealing to me, it will be a lot. I see why the Lord doesn't put too much on us. And it's like pulling back the layers. This is like an onion, and layer by layer, the Lord is doing a work. And sometimes we don't see it. Sometimes we just want that quick fix. We want to just know. We want to just get to a place of healing and wholeness. But the Lord knows what's deeper. He knows what's going on. He knows where the holes are. He knows what the causes are. He knows every little detail. And then just him knowing, he knows what to do. He knows when to put it down and he knows when to pick it up. And I'm in a place now where the mirror is in front of me and the Lord is talking to me while I'm standing in the mirror. And he's giving me more detail on who I am, who he's created me to be. He's given me detail on things he's taught me and why, and how I used to see myself, and now how I see myself, and the improvement, but also still work that needs to be done. He took me to this place in Jeremiah. I was sitting in the bathtub and I asked the Lord what he wanted me to focus on for next week. Because I'm coming to a place where I'm getting back on track and I'm, just continuing to do the work and continuing to walk. And I'm like, all right, I have to remind myself who I am. I have to look at some videos I've maybe done and hear myself talk and just get myself back on track. With that being said, I was asking the Lord, okay, as far as content, what are we focusing on? What's the topic? What are we focusing on? And normally, you know, when I ask that, or when the Lord is giving me something, it's something that is going on in my life. It's something that he's either been teaching me or is about to minister to me about. And he said lifestyle. And I said, okay, what about lifestyle? And he said fashion. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I know you don't want me to talk about actual fashion, like clothing, because I'm not into that. And so I'm like, let me go look up the definition, because when the Lord gives me words, I either, expand on it, I talk through it with him, or I go and I look up the definition of the word just to get more and just to seek what the Lord is saying. And even now I'm still doing that. And I'm unpacking and I'm talking about it with you guys. Because this is Mama Move. And in order for me to move in my body, I have to move in my mind. And so if I'm going to encourage mothers and women to do that, I have to do that myself. And I'm glad that I'm able to do that out here with y'all. But getting back on the topic of just unpacking, the Lord brought Jeremiah to mind. And he brought the place in Jeremiah where he talks about the potter and the clay. And he took Jeremiah to the potter's house. And he told Jeremiah, before I give you a word, and I'm not quoting this verbatim, but he told Jeremiah to go to the potter's house so that he could give him a word. And that stood out to me because initially I'm like, well, Lord, I was a little afraid. Like, am I, in reading the whole chapter, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Did I do something wrong? But I'm like, okay, what is standing out to me here? And the first thing that stood out to me is that the Lord gave Jeremiah instructions before he gave him a word. And he told him where to go somewhere to give him a word. And that stood out to me because sometimes we want the word in order to go and do. But sometimes the Lord is like, well, just follow my instruction. And sometimes we have to go to the place and experience and see something in order to get the word, in order for that word to seep in like it needs to seep in, so that when we receive that word, we have a full understanding and we have knowledge and we have wisdom and we have insight to what the Lord is saying. And when we release that word, we can release it with what we need to release it with. We can release it effectively, efficiently, and accurately. The next thing that stood out to me was how the Lord gave revelation about the potter and the clay, and how the potter in this example, of course, the Lord compared himself to the potter and us being the clay, right? And in this particular place, it was Israel being the clay and the Lord being the potter. But of course, I'm thinking about it as God being the potter and I'm being the clay. But the potter, he saw that the clay, the thing that he was shaping and forming, wasn't good. And so he changed it, he renewed it, he made it new. And then as I go on and read, what I was receiving from it was the Lord is in control of how he shapes and forms, how he fashions us. He's in control. He's the potter. He has full and total control, and we are the clay. And so he's making us into what it is he wants to see, what it is he wants to use, what it is he wants to put on display. That's so good. And he has full and total control if we just sit there and allow him to do it. I find myself sometimes not wanting to go and not wanting to move because I feel like I'm going to make the wrong decision or I'm going to make the wrong step. I'm going to make a mistake. And I was walking, and that's just how my thinking is. That's how I am in a way, and I'm changing that, and the Lord is helping me to see things differently. I have been just in a place where I just don't want to get it wrong. I just and I'll be paralyzed because I'm afraid to do the wrong thing, and so I won't go. But then if I don't go, I'm compelled and I'm feeling frustrated because I'm not going and I'm not doing because I'm a mover, and so the enemy will have you in a place of torment because what is in you is a cry. There's purpose in you, and that purpose wants to come out of you, wants to live, move, and breathe in your life. And it's not because you're afraid and you're not going and you're not doing and you're not being because you are afraid. And then you get comfortable, but then you can't get comfortable because there's something with God placed something in you that just won't leave. It's not going to go away. What he said is what he said. What he put in place is what he put in place. His will is his will. His word is his word. And his way is his way. And so it's not going anywhere. And so what we need to get rid of is the fear, because that is what can flee. It can't stop us if we don't let it. And so I've been in this place where I've been paralyzed and I won't move because I'm afraid to make decisions and choices. I'm afraid to get it wrong. And the Lord, I was walking, so I play worship music in my house. It's on YouTube. It's a YouTube channel that has worship music, and I play it on the TVs in my house throughout the day, and it has verses of scripture that pops up on the screen. Um, and so I was walking past my son's TV, and I was getting ready to go to bed, and I was reading Amos 5 and 6. That's what popped up. I believe it's 5 and 6 or 6 and 5. I think it's 5 and 6. And it said, seek God and live. And I'm just like, and I went to the chapter, and it speaks about a lot of things, but this particular part spoke to me specifically. I know I don't want to take it out of context. I don't want to, but in that moment, it made so much sense in where I was at that time. And what I got from it was, I can't be afraid to I can't be afraid to walk. I can't be afraid to live and move and be. I can't be afraid to go. And that's what God wants us to do. We can't be still. He's not going to tell us to stop. He may tell us to slow down. He may tell us to pause, take a break. But there's no stopping because there's an urgency for his will to be done on this earth. Right? And so I have to come to a place where if God didn't say it, then it ain't wrong. If I didn't hear from the Lord, then I'm going to keep on going until I hear from him. I have to be confident enough to walk, even if I'm walking wrong. I have to be confident enough to walk and know and trust in the Lord, knowing that he's going to tell me where to turn, where to stop, where to go. He's going to tell me where what I need to change. He's going to tell me, he's going to correct me. He's going to discipline me. He's going to make sure that I'm going in the right direction because he's in full and total control. And just connecting it back to what I read in Jeremiah about the potter and the clay, and just God being the potter and I am the clay, and how God is in control to shape and form me. If I sit in his presence, if I'm just here allowing him to do that so that he can make me into what it is he wants to use, what it is he wants to put on display, no matter how that looks, no matter how I feel about it, and no matter what that is him knowing how he created me, and him forming and shaping me in a way that I can be used effectively for his people, for his sheep, And so as I am just walking in this place of just looking at myself in the mirror and seeing myself, and I'm focusing on identity and self-love and self-care. And one of the things that I have to focus on is just giving myself grace, giving myself permission to make mistakes, giving myself permission to walk, understanding that I will make mistakes, giving myself permission to be confident with the reality that I am going to make mistakes. And I asked the Lord today, Lord, where did I get that from? Where I feel like I can't get it wrong. Where did perfection come from? What went wrong? And I'm still talking to the Lord about that. But something went wrong. And my reality was that everything had to be perfect, or it didn't need to be at all. Like, I can't walk unless it's right. I can't walk unless it's perfect. I can't walk unless it looks how I expect it to look, and that's just not realistic. You're going to make mistakes. I think about everybody's walk in the Bible and how the only person's walk that was perfect was Jesus, and Jesus still had his moments. Remember that moment where he said, Lord, take this cup from me. He had moments where he cried. He had moments where he wept. He had moments where he was, approached by the enemy in a place of him being weak. And he showed us how to live, of course. The only perfect one was Jesus, but looking at everybody in the word, it's like the journey is not perfect. The journey doesn't look perfect. It doesn't look cute all the time. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be wrapped up in a gift. Sometimes it's going to get ugly. Sometimes you are going to make mistakes. Sometimes you are going to make the wrong choices and make the wrong turns. Look at Abraham. Look how many decisions that he made that wasn't the best. And even with children, we love our kids, but we're going to make mistakes. Look at all of the mistakes that he made, but God called him his friend. He was faithful, and look how God used him. Look how God put him on display for even now us to be talking about him and his story and what God did in his life. God used him, but in the midst of it, he was shaping and forming and fashioning and doing the work that needed to be done for the finished work, for that masterpiece, as God calls us, to be on display, to be complete, to be used, because that's what God calls us in the book of Ephesians. He calls us his masterpiece. And that's where I started when I started my walk, and just, my relationship with the Lord started to build more. I see my worth in that scripture where it says we are God's masterpiece, and just thinking about the potter and the clay and how he's just forming and shaping us every day to be his masterpieces and who he created us to be, so that we can be put on display and that we can be used. as his instruments and as the things that he created. And so I'm just walking knowing and being confident that the Lord has my back, that I can walk and I don't have to be nervous. I don't have to fret or have any anxiety. I don't have to worry. I don't have to be uh, anxious about anything. That I can just walk and be confident, understanding that God's grace is sufficient for me, understanding that I have new mercy every day when I wake up, understanding that the Lord is not looking at my flaws and my downfalls and being disappointed, understanding that I can give myself grace because he gives me grace, understanding that I am his masterpiece and no matter what I do, he's still going to love me. Um, Understanding I'm not disappointing him and he understands that I am walking and I am just wanting to do his will and do it his way. And it doesn't look perfect. I'm not always so willing to follow his instructions because sometimes I'm afraid, but I know that he sees my effort. He knows my heart. He knows I want to do it. And when I do it and I step out on faith, I know that he's pleased because faith pleases him. And so I'm just walking this thing out, y'all, and I'm doing it in front of a camera with y'all so y'all can do the same thing and we can do this thing together. We got to get moving in our minds so that we can move in our bodies, so that we can be all that God has created and formed us to be, so that we can do all that he has called us to do and we can go where he has planned for us to go. I am your host, LaQuisha Williams. I'm not only ministering to you, I am ministering to myself. Thank you guys for watching. I love you with the love of the Lord. I hope you have a beautiful, blessed, and prosperous day.